Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Quilter. This quilt review has been a long time coming, and that is because I did finish this quilt top quite a while ago, but the binding part routinely eludes me. I feel like I just have to kind of move on to the next quilt to have something to film for you guys, and this year I'm trying to go a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical, and kind of finish the things that I need to get finished and be done with, and that way I can move on to these other quilts that I have wanted to do or have been working on with sort of a clean conscience that I'm not leaving some stuff behind or quilts behind to be done. So the one behind me is the Kite in a Square quilt block, and I used the Kite in a Square block lock roller that made a 5-inch finished quilt block, and there are other pieces that go with it, basically to cut out the kite and then to cut out either end of that or the white piece here, right? So essentially one block right here, and there are a lot of these. So this took quite the time because the entire quilt is made up of this plus a 5-inch border all the way around. The approximate size of this quilt is 90 inches by 89.5 inches. So it is a very big quilt. Now, as I have said, this quilt has been a long time coming, and the initial project idea that I had looked very different. I wanted to make a quilt that I had seen online, and if you're interested in that kind of talk, I did talk about that whenever I started this project, so you can check that video out. But the project definitely progressed from there into this design here, and then what I wanted to do was to further that in my sort of quilting and try to do something that was kind of two-dimensional. And what I mean by that is I wanted the front and the back of the quilt to be both something you wanted to look at. So that is why most of this front is an ombre pattern here, but on the back of the quilt, as you can see here, there is a lot of white. Now, the entire thing is not completely white, okay? There is a T-section of these Kite square blocks, and I'm gonna, of course, along this time frame, I will have pictures of that popping up for you guys to see so that you can see what I'm talking about. Now, my whole goal with basically sewing two quilt tops and putting them together was I wanted to experience and show off the quilting design on the back of the quilt. So as you saw on the back of this with all of that white on there, it really makes the thread pop. And my thought process was having just a line down and a horizontal line across, and then the rest of this being white, that I could basically flow through the design on the front of the quilt and it would be mirrored on the back of the quilt, and you would have this quilting done that flew into one of these blocks and then back into nothing, right? So almost like an in relief picture, for lack of a better term. If you know the term for this, then please put that in the comments down below, because I'm not really sure what the term, or if there is a term for this, but that was my thought process. I feel like it's something really hard to describe, but maybe something easier to see when you actually see the pictures of this quilt. Because I wanted my thread to show up, but I also didn't want it to take over the quilt, and I also had a lot of different colors for this ombre fabric. What I ended up using was the Glide, Glide Lemon Ice thread. And I used the Magna Glide bobbins that correspond with this. And you all know that if you've watched my channel that I love Glide and Magna Glide bobbins for quilting on my King Quilter. It's just made my life super easy. But I did a lot of research on thread colors and watched a lot of YouTube videos, and Angela Walters routinely says that she uses a light yellow color when she has a very multicolored quilt. And the reason for that is that it can kind of blend a little bit easier. Now, you can definitely see it on these darker fabrics here, so on these darker blue purples and even the darker some of the darker blues, it's a lot easier to see that than it is on the other part of the quilt. But what it does is it gives enough of a contrast in these white areas that we get a really good sort of texture to the quilt. So that's the reason why I chose the yellow thread, even though most of my background is white, and even on the back of the quilt, the predominant color on the back of the quilt is white. But I think it helps, this thread helped it to just kind of show the beautiful quilting. Now, for me, I think the big question is, did this work or did it not work? And I think that it's a, like, maybe it worked. So there are areas of the front and the back that really meld together really nicely when we're looking at this. And actually, I'm going to flip the quilt around so that you guys can see that. Hold on one second. Okay, that's better. Now, what you can see here, and maybe I should have done this when I was describing it before, but you can really see the design pattern that I chose here as it moved into this quilt and then as it moves on out of the quilt. And that's what I wanted the entire quilt to look like. I wanted it to be this almost in relief or, you know, mirror image of what we were seeing as we moved into and out of the colors. And why I say maybe it worked is because it worked in some areas. You know, the horizontal part here, like this one, I think looks pretty darn good, but it's not perfect. So as we move up into some of these areas, I started to get a little bit off on my quilting. And I think the only way for me to have done this would have been basically to somewhat make a quilt sandwich the old-fashioned way, right? So putting it on the floor, pinning it so that I could make sure that my pieces were properly on the machine, or even trying to pin it as I was rolling it up. I'm not sure if I could do that, but I think that you'd have to do more pinning to make sure that this is straight, because whenever as much as I tried to roll them at the same sort of go as everything else, it just didn't quite match up. And it's very minuscule, and I think the overall idea of what I was going for when you see it from afar is great, and it definitely works. But if you get really close, right? So, I mean, I feel like if I submitted this to a contest, I feel like definitely points would be deducted because it's not perfect in that sort of progression. There are some areas where it starts to get a little bit off. Now, again, overall, does this matter? No, certainly it doesn't. And I'm not submitting this for any sort of judging or anything like that. I'm just giving you guys the facts here that it didn't really totally work out for me. It doesn't mean it's a bad quilt. I love it. I think it's beautiful. It's a very fun quilt. It's a very colorful quilt, and overall I'm very happy with it. It's also a really big quilt, so it's definitely a bed quilt, not one that I'm really going to be dragging around the house. So this will definitely be for somebody who is looking for a happy bed cover, or one that I just want to throw on during springtime for fun exciting colors, right? But overall, I'm very happy with it. I think the idea that I was going for got relayed, so I think that that's a win. Was it technically 100%? Certainly not, but this is the first one I ever tried this, so practice makes perfect. Maybe I can do this again. I don't know that I would do it on this scale again, just because it was, a lot of work, but I think it's something I could do again. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was just the overall design. So I went over this design a little bit with you guys whenever I was actually quilting it. So if you want it more in depth, I would definitely check out those videos. But My main goal with this was to make it very consistent, so we had this consistent texture throughout, but I did throw in like three different designs, and I'll show those on there. Let's see. Oh, one of them is down here. Let me see if I can. There you go. So this is one of the variations in the designs that I did. And as I said, I'll definitely have you guys look at a couple the other ones. I'll put those on the screen as well. My inspiration there came from a quilt that Natalia Bonner did. It was something not quite like this, but a very similar repeating pattern, which not that that's totally uncommon in quilting. And she decided to throw in, I think, like one different one from everything that she was doing. And I loved that idea of throwing in something a little bit different just to give your eye a difference in texture, maybe draw your attention to a particular area. I wasn't really focused on that. I was more just focused on giving a different texture to certain areas, especially knowing that I would have this area in relief. I thought that would kind of pop a little bit more on the background of the quilt, or on the back of the quilt, and I do think it does that. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. I know it's been a long time coming for this quilt. If you want to see me piece this quilt, or if you want to see me quilting it or going into further in-depth design ideas, then watch the other videos that I've already done. If you have questions about this quilt, or maybe there was a question that wasn't answered in the other videos and you have one now, then please comment down below and I will do my best to get back to you guys. I always love reading the comments. And as always, I hope that you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, thumbs up, all of the YouTubey things, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks.